This is happening right now as you watch this video. American citizens are cut off. No power, no clean water, one hospital, severely flooded, roads impassable, and 45,000 people waiting to find out just how bad it actually is. This is not a story from a faraway country. This is U.S. soil, American territory, American citizens, stranded in the middle of the Pacific Ocean after the strongest tropical cyclone on Earth this year came straight for them. I'm on the pulse for you right now. And guys, when I track this story from the moment Sinlaku formed on April 9th through to what is being reported on the ground today, I have to say this is one of the most intense disaster sequences I have seen hit American territory in years. And there is something underneath this storm that nobody is talking about. Something that tells you this is not just bad luck. Something that changes how we should think about what is coming next. But first, let me give you the full picture of what just happened. Super Typhoon Sinlaku is a powerful tropical cyclone in the western Pacific Ocean that cut across the islands of Tinian and Saipan in the Northern Mariana Islands and brought high winds and heavy rain to Guam and Rota in April 2026. Encyclopedia Britannica Tinian, Saipan, Rota, Guam, U.S. territories. Saipan and Tinian are islands in the U.S. Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, home to about 45,000 people. NPR, 45,000 Americans on these islands right now, without power, without running water, waiting for first responders who still cannot reach them because the roads are blocked by debris. Power and water were out, and many of the roads were impassable across Saipan and Tinian, according to officials. NPR power out, water out, roads impassable. And then this. The only hospital on Saipan suffered severe flooding, and there were reports of major resorts that lost backup generators. NPR, the only hospital on the entire island severely flooded. Think about what that means for anyone who was injured during this storm. Think about anyone who needs emergency surgery, anyone who needs dialysis, anyone in a critical condition. One hospital flooded on an island cut off from the outside world by downed power lines and impassable roads. And the official response from the territory's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management: we still have a shelter in place, so first responders have not been able to do a full damage assessment, said Bernard Villagomez, Public Information Officer for the territory's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. NPR still sheltering in place. Still can't do a full damage assessment, still can't see the full picture of what Sinlaku left behind, because the conditions are still too dangerous to move freely. Please give this video a like and a hype right now if you are watching this. This story deserves to be seen. These American citizens deserve to have their situation known. And it costs you nothing. Now, let me take you back to the beginning of this story, because the way this storm developed is extraordinary. The system that would become Super Typhoon Sinlaku began as a tropical depression on April 8th, north of the Cook Islands in Micronesia. Encyclopedia Britannica, April 8th. A tropical depression, low-level circulation, disorganized thunderstorms, and then the Pacific Ocean gave it exactly what it needed. Sinlaku took advantage of favorable conditions for its rapid intensification, including low wind shear of 5 to 10 knots, sea surface temperatures of 28 to 29 degrees Celsius, which is 82 to 84 degrees Fahrenheit, with warm waters that extended to great depth. Yale Climate Connection's sea surface temperatures of 84 degrees Fahrenheit extended deep into the ocean column. That is critical. When warm water is only at the surface, a powerful storm can churn it up and mix in cooler water from below. That acts as a natural break. But when the warm water extends deep, there is no break. The storm feeds and feeds and feeds, and Sinlaku fed on those waters like nothing in 2026 had yet. Sinlaku likely peaked at 5 p.m. EDT Sunday, April 12th, with 180 miles per hour winds. Yale Climate Connections, 180 miles per hour. That is 290 kilometers per hour. That is not a strong hurricane. That is at the absolute upper limit of what tropical cyclones can produce. At its peak, the storm produced maximum sustained sustained winds of 185 miles per hour and a minimum central pressure of 896 millibars, making it one of the strongest typhoons on record and one of the few Category 5 typhoons to form between January and April. Encyclopedia Britannica, 896 millibars of central pressure. To put that in context, the lower the pressure, the more intense the storm. 896 millibars is catastrophic, catastrophically low, and it formed in April. Sinlaku is the second Category 5 tropical cyclone of 2026, following Horatio, which churned over the South Indian Ocean in late February. Meteorologists note that Sinlaku is also one of only a handful of Category 5 typhoons known to have occurred so early in the year. NASA Science 2 Category 5 cyclones. Before we even reached mid-April, we are not even a third of the way through the year, and the planet has already produced 2 storms of the highest possible intensity category, right? It is unusually early for a super typhoon in the western North Pacific. Sinlaku is the last of a rare set of triplet cyclones that formed this month. The Washington Post 3 cyclones in 1 month in April across different ocean basins. That is the unusual pattern that meteorologists are tracking right now. And I'll tell you what it means for the rest of 2026 further into this video. But first, let me tell you what happened when Sinlaku finally reached land. Sinlaku made landfall on Tinian and Saipan at 10:15 p.m. Chamorro Standard Time with winds of 150 miles per hour. Encyclopedia Britannica, 150 miles per hour at landfall. Category 4 at the moment it came ashore. After being Category 5 just 36 hours earlier, it weakened slightly over the islands, but 150 miles per hour is still absolutely catastrophic. Total rainfall amounts of 15 to 25 inches over Tinian and Saipan seas of 20 to 30 feet and storm surge flooding of 5 to 8 feet were forecast by the National Weather Service in Guam. Yale Climate Connections 25 inches of rain, 30-foot seas, 8-foot storm surge in one storm on islands that are not much bigger than a small city. Saipan Mayor Ramon R.B. Jose Blas Camacho told AP that parts of the island saw extensive flooding. He said Tuesday that Sinlaku was hitting us hard. It's so difficult for us to respond with this heavy rain, heavy wind to rescue people. Objects are just flying left and right. CBS News, objects flying left and right. The mayor of Saipan saying that directly in a message to the Associated Press, while the storm was still battering his island. In the village of Susupi on Saipan, the wind tore the roof off a commercial building and broke tree branches. A blue sedan lay on its side. Resident Dongmin Lee shot some video of a car sitting on top of 2 others in his apartment building's parking lot below. NBC News, a car sitting on top of 2 other cars in a parking lot. That is what 150 miles per hour does. It does not just break things. It throws them, it stacks them, it rearranges the physical landscape of an island. The storm first hit the islands Tuesday night local time and continued with a barrage of fierce winds and relentless rains for hours Wednesday that flipped over cars, toppled utility poles, and ripped away tin roofs. NPR hours, not minutes, not a brief, intense passage, hours of this, because this is what made Sinlaku so particularly destructive on these islands. It slowed down. Before arriving on land, the storm had become nearly stationary about 30 miles off the coast of the archipelago for several hours. Its slow pace raised concerns about how long the storm would linger in the region and the amount of damage that could cause. CBS News, nearly stationary, hovering 30 miles offshore, continuously pumping ferocious winds and rain onto the islands before it even made landfall. And then when it did come ashore, it moved slowly. A slow typhoon is a catastrophic typhoon. When a storm moves quickly, it hits hard and passes, painful but brief. When it moves slowly, it works on a place, saturates every structure, weakens every wall, fills every drainage system, floods every low-lying area, and keeps going. Hour after hour, Typhoon Sinlaku had a large eye of the storm passing over both Tinian and Saipan Islands simultaneously. Yale Climate Connections, both islands simultaneously. The eye was large enough to cover both. At the same time, a 400-mile wide storm. The center of the 400-mile wide storm had moved only a few miles northwest of Tinian and Saipan, and it was still large enough to cover the entirety of the Northern Marianas. Encyclopedia Britannica large enough to cover the entirety of the Northern Marianas. All of it. Every island. Under the same storm, the monster storm still had winds of 125 mph late Wednesday night as it pulled away to the north from the islands of Saipan, Tinian, and Rota. NPR 125 miles per hour, still a major storm. As it was pulling away, and Guam did not escape. Tropical force winds and torrential rainfall led to flash flooding on Guam, a U.S. territory that's a critical hub for U.S. forces in the Pacific, home to 3 U.S. military bases and about 170,000 people. Wind gusts peaked at 88 mph Tuesday night local time on the island. CBS News, 88 miles per hour gusts on a U.S. military hub, 3 military bases, 170,000 people. U.S. military officials warned personnel to shelter in place. The military controls about 1/3 of the land on Guam. CBS News shelter in place, U.S. military on a critical Pacific installation because the storm was too powerful to operate in. Now let me give you the damage picture, because as of today, the full picture is not yet known. The assessment is still being conducted. We still have a shelter in place, so first responders have not been able to do a full damage assessment. The Federal Emergency Management Agency planned to send more personnel to the region and ramp up shipments of supplies. NPR FEMA is moving, personnel heading to the islands, supplies being shipped. Almost 100 trained Red Cross disaster workers from all over the U.S. have traveled as far as 7,000 miles to help people impacted by this massive storm. Along with local Red Cross volunteers, they are working with local and federal partners and community agencies to ensure people get the help they need. More help is on the way later this week after the storm passes. American Red Cross 100 Red Cross disaster workers from across the entire United States traveling 7,000 miles to reach American citizens on these islands. Super Typhoon Sinlaku has made landfall on Tinian and Saipan as an extremely dangerous storm with 130 mph winds, heavy rain, and waves over 40 feet high. American Red Cross waves over 40 feet. That is a 4-story building of ocean moving toward land. Disaster volunteers are waiting out the storm in Japan, South Korea, and Hawaii and will travel to the affected islands to help. American Red Cross in Japan, in South Korea, in Hawaii, waiting for conditions to improve enough to fly in, because right now they cannot safely reach the islands. Some hard-hit areas of the Northern Marianas could be without power and water for weeks after the Pacific Ocean islands were battered by a super typhoon, an official said Thursday. NPR weeks, not days, weeks without power, weeks without running water for 45,000 Americans in tropical heat. On islands with a flooded hospital and roads blocked by debris, Saipan was still recovering from 2018's Super Typhoon U2 when the COVID-19 pandemic hit. NBC News still recovering from 2018, when 2020 brought the pandemic, and now 2026 brings Sinlaku. Saipan has been hit by 2 super typhoons in 8 years, and this community had not yet fully recovered from the last one before this one arrived. That is the human context behind the numbers. The structures that would normally withstand a strong storm were already weakened, already compromised by U2, now hit again, harder. Resident Matthew Mazga said while driving around, "I noticed numerous wooden and semi-concrete houses with damaged rooftops due to the passing typhoon. Notably, many of our power poles and power lines are down." NBC News wooden and semi-concrete houses. These are not reinforced concrete structures built to modern typhoon standards. These are the homes of a community that has been economically struggling. where people built what they could afford, and what they could afford was not enough to withstand 150 miles per hour. Now, let me address the bigger picture, because there is something genuinely alarming in how and why Sinlaku formed, and why this is not just bad luck. Sinlaku is the classic type of early season super typhoon that one would expect to see when the ocean atmosphere system is on its way toward a strong El Nino event, as currently appears to be the case. Yale Climate Connections, a strong El Nino brewing. The season is expected to be anomalously active because of a burgeoning El Nino, which induces a warming of water temperatures. That helps air to rise, generating more and stronger storms. Common dreams more and stronger. That is the forecast for the rest of 2026. Sinlaku is the last in a rare set of triplet cyclones that formed this month, which is an unusual pattern that is also contributing to a burst of winds that is expected to greatly boost the odds of a super El Nino later this year, pushing warm water west to east across the Pacific. Common dreams a super El Nino later in 2026. Sinlaku was not just a catastrophe. According to meteorologists, it may be a warning signal of what the entire 2026 Pacific typhoon season will look like. And hurricane scientist Jeff Masters put a specific number on the trend that should make every Pacific Island community take notice. Masters said Sinlaku was just the latest in what he described as an unprecedented number of Category 4 and Category 5 typhoons over the last decade, which he attributed to a combination of natural variability and climate change. Beginning in 2017, the U.S. has gotten absolutely hammered by high-intensity Category 4 and 5 hurricanes. 7 have hit the continental U.S., 1 has hit Puerto Rico, and now 2 have hit the Northern Mariana Islands. That's as many U.S. Category 4 and 5 landfalls as had occurred in the prior 57 years. Common dreams. As many U.S. Category 4 and 5 landfalls in about a decade as in the previous 57 years. That number is staggering. 57 years to accumulate one tally, 1 decade to match it. 10 of the 13 strongest tropical typhoons to make landfall in the last 80 years have occurred since 2006. Common dreams 10 of the 13 strongest landfalling typhoons in 80 years occurred in the last 20 years. The most intense storms are concentrating in our era, and the Mariana Islands have now been hit by 2 of them. Yutu in 2018, Sinlaku in 2026. Earth's strongest storm of 2018. Super Typhoon Yutu followed a nearly identical track as Sinlaku, hitting Tinian Island in the U.S. Northern Mariana Islands on October 24th with sustained winds of 175 mph. Yutu is tied for 13th place for the strongest tropical cyclone at landfall in world history. Yale Climate Connections 13th strongest landfall in world history in 2018. And now 2026 brings another one along nearly the same track, to the same islands, to the same communities that were still healing. So where does this situation stand right now? So far, there have been no reports of deaths. NPR. No deaths reported. That is the remarkable outcome given the ferocity of this storm. The warning systems worked. The shelters opened in time. As many as 17 shelters are open on Guam, Rota, Tinian, and Saipan, in which hundreds of people have sought refuge from the typhoon. American Red Cross 17 shelters. Hundreds of people. The American Red Cross and its partners were sheltering more than 1,000 residents across Guam and the Northern Marianas. NPR, more than 1,000 people sheltered in Red Cross facilities, but the full damage assessment has not yet happened. First responders are still getting out onto the roads, still working through blocked streets and downed lines. The hospital is flooded and there are reports of backup generators failing at major facilities. Officials still advise people to remain indoors Wednesday as wind gusts up to 70 mph were ongoing in many areas, while storm surge produced waves as high as 18 feet, the Weather Service said. CBS News, 18-foot waves. Still happening the day after landfall because Sinlaku was so large and so slow. And while all of this was happening, the president had already acted before the storm hit. On Sunday, President Trump approved emergency disaster declarations ahead of the forecasted storm for Guam and the Mariana Islands. CBS News emergency declarations before landfall, which means federal resources were pre-authorized. FEMA could act without waiting for post-disaster paperwork. That pre-positioning matters enormously for the speed of the response. What these islands need now is direct federal attention, continued and sustained, not the kind that shows up for a week and then fades when the news cycle moves on. Because the last time this happened, in 2018 with U2, Saipan was still recovering from 2018's super typhoon U2 when the COVID-19 pandemic hit. NBC News. They were still recovering 8 years later, and now they have to start again. 45,000 Americans on islands most of the continental United States cannot point to on a map. U.S. citizens who hold U.S. passports, who serve in the U.S. military, who pay into the U.S. system, and who are now without power, without water, with a flooded hospital, with impassable roads, with weeks of recovery ahead of them, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. I'll stay on this. Every FEMA update, every Red Cross report from the field, every damage assessment as it comes in. If you found this important, please share it right now. These islands are remote. The people there are forgotten by mainstream coverage too quickly. The end screen has more on what is happening across the Pacific right now, including the broader typhoon season picture that is developing. Watch it. Thank you so much. Stay safe, guys. Be aware. Bye-bye.